The work of Mark Aronoff and Dorothy Siegel on the attachment of affixes played an important role in showing that affixes do not attach to words freely. They follow specific morphological restrictions. Main idea: their research showed that different affixes attach to different kinds of bases, and these restrictions are part of morphological rules, not just syntax or phonology. They observed that some affixes attach mainly to Latinate bases, while others attach to native English bases. Example: Latinate affixes, ity, iron, are usually attached to Latinate words. Examples: active activity, nation, national. These affixes normally do not attach to native Germanic bases. Example: goodity, not acceptable. Native affixes. Some affixes attach mainly to native English words. Example: dark, darkness, kind, kindness, significance. Their work demonstrated that affix attachment follows morphological constraints. Morphology has its own rules and structure, separate from syntax and phonology. Conclusion: the dissertation by Aronoff and Siegel showed that word formation is governed by systematic morphological rules about which affixes can attach to which types of bases, strengthening the argument that morphology is an independent component of grammar. Under the assumption that affixes affecting stress are applied after stress rules, Dorothy Siegel classified English affixes into two classes based on their effect on stress patterns. 1. Class 1 affixes, stress affecting. These affixes can change the stress pattern of the base word. They attach closer to the root and may trigger phonological changes. Example: comma, electric electricity, ity shifts the stress, comma, divine divinity. Here, the addition of ity changes where the stress falls in the word. 2. Class 2 affixes, stress neutral. These affixes do not change the stress pattern of the base word. The original stress of the word remains the same. Example: happy happiness, ness does not change stress. Keenness. Conclusion: Siegel's classification showed that affixes behave differently with respect to phonological processes like stress, dividing them into Class 1, stress affecting, Class 2, stress neutral. This supported the idea that morphology interacts closely with phonology and word formation. According to the analysis proposed by Dorothy Siegel, Class 1 affixes are attached before stress rules apply. Explanation: Class 1 affixes interact with phonology. Because they affect the stress pattern of a word, they must be added earlier in the derivation, before the phonological stress rules operate. After the affix attaches, the stress rules apply to the whole word, which can shift the stress. Example: word, electric electricity, base, electric, stress on lec. Add Class 1 affix ity electricity. After attachment, stress rules apply, producing electricity. Here the affix ity causes the stress to move, showing that it was attached before the stress rules were applied. Conclusion: Thus, Class 1 affixes are attached before the application of stress rules, which is why they are able to change the stress pattern of the word.
Now, it's mentioned in the book that class 1 affixes do not affect stress. Is that correct or incorrect? So, the response is that it's not correct actually. Ringwa Baby mentions that incorrectly.
It is incorrect. In the classification proposed by Dorothy Siegel, Class 1 affixes do affect stress, while Class 2 affixes do not affect stress. Correct distinction. Class 1 affixes, stress affecting. They can change the stress pattern of the base word. They are attached before stress rules apply. Example, comma, electric electricity, ity shifts the stress. Class 2 affixes, stress neutral. They do not change the stress pattern of the base word. Example, happy happiness, ness keeps the same stress. Tick. Conclusion: the statement that Class 1 affixes do not affect stress is wrong. Class 1 affixes affect stress, whereas Class 2 affixes do not affect stress. According to the classification proposed by Dorothy Siegel, Class 2 affixes are attached after the stress rules apply. Explanation: Class 2 affixes do not affect the stress pattern of the base word, because they are added after the phonological stress rules have already applied. The original stress of the word remains unchanged. Example: word, happy happiness, base word, happy, stress on the first syllable. Add Class 2 affix ness happiness. The stress remains on harp, showing that the affix was attached after the stress rules applied. Conclusion: Thus, Class 2 affixes are applied after stress rules, which is why they do not change the stress pattern of the base word. Yes, this statement is correct. In English, derivational morphemes occur before inflectional morphemes. Explanation: derivational morphemes create new words or change the word class. Inflectional morphemes only express grammatical information such as number, tense, or possession, without creating a new word. Because of this, the derivational affix attaches to the root first, and the inflectional affix is added last. Example: modern, modernize, modernized. 1. Modern, root. 2. Modern plus eyes, modernize. Derivational, forms of verb. 3. Modernize plus it, modernized. Inflectional, past tense. Another example: nation, national, nationals. 1. Nation, root. 2. Nation plus l, national. Derivational. 3. National plus s, nationals. Inflectional, plural. Conclusion: Thus, in English, derivational morphemes attach closer to the root, and inflectional morphemes occur at the outermost position in the word. The correct answer is inflectional morphemes. Explanation: piling up means several morphemes of the same type attaching one after another to a base. In English, derivational morphemes can pile up. Multiple derivational affixes can occur together. Inflectional morphemes generally do not pile up. Only one inflectional ending normally appears at the end of a word. Example: derivational piling up. Nation, national, nationalize, nationalization. Here, several derivational affixes, al, eyes, ashen, attach successively. Inflectional morphemes: cat, cats, walk, walked. You cannot normally add multiple inflectional endings together. Example: incorrect. Catses, whoops. Conclusion: Thus, inflectional morphemes do not exhibit piling up, whereas derivational morphemes can occur in sequences.
Clitic has affix like dependency on neighboring words.
Yes, the statement means that a clitic depends on a neighboring word in a way similar to an affix. Explanation. A clitic is a morpheme that cannot stand independently and must attach phonologically to a nearby word, called its host. In this sense, it shows affix-like dependency, but it is not fully an affix because it behaves more like a separate word grammatically. Example, English S, possessive. John's book, The King of England's Crown. Here S attaches to the whole phrase the King of England, not just the noun king. This shows that it behaves like a clitic, not a normal suffix. Another example, contracted auxiliary. I am, they are there. The M and a depend on a preceding word for pronunciation, showing clitic-like attachment. Conclusion. Thus, clitics have an affix-like dependency on neighboring words because they must attach phonologically to a host, although they function grammatically more like independent words than true affixes. The syntax of clitics is characterized by the fact that they behave like words in syntactic structure, even though they depend phonologically on another word. Explanation. A clitic attaches to a neighboring word for pronunciation, but in syntax it functions like an independent word. Thus, clitics show a mixed behavior. Phonologically like an affix, needs a host. Syntactically like a word. Example, English S, possessive. The King of England's crown. Here S attaches to the whole phrase the King of England, not just the noun king. This shows that syntactically it behaves like a word level element, not like a normal suffix. Another example, I am. Here M attaches to I for pronunciation, but it represents the verb am, which is a separate word in syntax. Conclusion. Thus, clitics are syntactically structured like words, even though phonologically they depend on neighboring words. Clitics are typically attached outside both derivational and inflectional affixes. Explanation. In the structure of a word, the order is generally root derivational affixes, inflectional affixes, clitics. This means clitics occur at the outermost position, attaching to the already completed word or even to a whole phrase. Example, English possessive S, the student's book. Here S attaches after the noun phrase, outside the normal word formation affixes. Another example, John has arrived, John's arrived. Here S, clitic for has, attaches outside the normal morphological structure of the word. Conclusion. Thus, clitics are positioned outside both derivational and inflectional affixes because they attach to a whole word or phrase rather than forming part of the word's internal morphology. It is challenging to distinguish clitics from inflectional affixes because both can have syntactic relevance. Explanation. Syntactic relevance means that both clitics and inflectional affixes contribute grammatical information required by the syntax of a sentence, such as tense, agreement, or possession. Because they both interact with syntax, they can appear similar. Inflectional affixes attach to a word and mark grammatical categories like tense, number, or agreement. Clitics also express grammatical relations but behave syntactically like independent words, even though they attach phonologically to another word. Example, inflectional affix, walk, walked. Here it marks past tense, a grammatical requirement of a sentence. Clitic, John has arrived, John's arrived. Here S represents has, which is grammatically required in a sentence but attaches phonologically to John. Conclusion. Thus, distinguishing clitics from inflectional affixes is difficult because both carry syntactic information and play a role in the grammatical structure of sentences. Arnold M. Zwicky and Jeffrey K. Pullum proposed criteria for distinguishing affixes from clitics in 1983. Explanation. They developed several diagnostic criteria to clearly separate clitics from affixes because both appear attached to words and can look similar. Their criteria focused on differences in phonology, how they attach to a host, morphology, whether they are part of word formation, syntax, whether they behave like independent words. Example, English possessive S, the King of England's crown. Here S attaches to the entire phrase the King of England, not just to the noun king, because it attaches to a phrase rather than a specific word stem. Zwicky and Pullum considered it a clitic rather than an affix. Conclusion. Thus, in 1983, Zwicky and Pullum proposed systematic criteria to distinguish clitics from affixes, helping linguists analyze their different morphological and syntactic behaviors. A characteristic feature of clitics concerning their host is that they show a comparatively lower degree of selection than affixes. Explanation. Affixes are highly selective about the base they attach to. They usually attach only to a specific category of word, such as noun, verb, or adjective. Clitics, however, are less selective. They can attach to various kinds of hosts, sometimes even to an entire phrase, not just a particular word. Example, affix, high selection. Suffixness attaches mainly to adjectives. Happy, happiness, but it cannot attach to nouns or verbs. Runness, clitic, low selection. English possessive S can attach to many types of hosts. John's book, The King of England's Crown. Here S attaches to the whole phrase, showing that clitics are less selective about their host. Conclusion. Thus, a key property of clitics is their lower degree of host selection compared to affixes, meaning they can attach more freely to different kinds of words or phrases. The arbitrary gap is more characteristic of affixed words. Explanation. An arbitrary gap means that some possible word forms do not occur in a language, even though they would seem possible by the rules. These gaps often appear in affixed words because affixes have strict and sometimes irregular restrictions on which bases they can attach to. In contrast, clitics are less selective about their hosts, so such gaps are less common in clitic groups. Example, affixed word, gap. Suffixness usually attaches to adjectives. Happy, happiness, dark, darkness, but some logically possible forms do not occur, comma, goodness exists, but tallness or greenness may be avoided or rare in certain contexts. These kinds of unexpected missing forms are called arbitrary gaps. Conclusion. Thus, arbitrary gaps are more typical in affixed words than in clitic groups because affixes impose stronger morphological restrictions than clitics. Think of affixes like special Lego pieces that only fit with certain other pieces. Sometimes it looks like a piece should fit, but actually it doesn't because the rules of the set don't allow it. That missing piece is called an arbitrary gap. Simple example, we can add ness to some words. Happy, happiness, dark, darkness. But if we try fast, fastness, people usually say speed instead. Even though ness normally works with adjectives, sometimes the language just doesn't use that form. The place where a word could exist that doesn't is the gap. Why this happens? Affixes are very picky about which words they attach to. Because they are picky, sometimes we expect a word but the language simply doesn't have it. So, affixes equals picky more gaps. Clitics equals less picky fewer gaps. Yes, slightly smiling face. I use Lego pieces just as a simple comparison. Imagine building words like building with Lego blocks. The root word is the main block. Affixes, like nes, lie, are extra blocks you attach to it, but these blocks don't fit everywhere. Some blocks only connect to certain shapes. Example, you can attach nes to some adjectives. Happy, happiness. Kind, kindness. But sometimes a word that looks possible is not used in the language. Fast, fastness. People usually say speed, so there is a missing word even though it looks possible. That missing place is called an arbitrary gap. Simple idea. Affixes are picky about which words they attach to. Because they are picky, some expected words don't exist, these are gaps. That's why arbitrary gaps are more common in affixed words than in critic groups.